Hello everybody, this is my third blog. I am coming at you from Dundee. As I was saying this, I was just thinking about this movie, Good Morning Vietnam, back in the, I don't know, whenever Robin Williams did that, where he just starts that first broadcast with Good Morning Vietnam. Not always something that I'm necessarily the person to have that type of like excitement, but I'm feeling more excited about doing these vlogs, and I love being outside. It's a really nice day. So I live in Scotland, in Dundee, and they say it's the sunniest place in Scotland, and definitely is compared to what I imagine the west coast is of Scotland, like where Glasgow is, and the Isle of Skye and all those places, because it could be quite grey and muggy and cold and windy and rainy, wetty. Here it's a bit drier, but it's just a beautiful day. It's like, I don't know, 15 degrees Celsius. See, I'm from America. You think that I would have like the Fahrenheit first, the Fahrenheit and the pounds first, but no, I don't. I've just fully been in the Celsius and kilograms and kilometers for ages, and I think that started when I moved to Australia when I was like somewhere in my 20s, 25, 26. I think it was 26 when I moved to Australia, and I grew up in California with inches and feet and pounds and all that stuff. However, because I was studying like mathematics and physics and chemistry and all that stuff in school, you start getting associated with all the metrics, meters and what do you call it, kilograms, Celsius, Kelvin, all the different like units that are used in most of the world, but the US. So Australia is like, used to be the imperial system, where it was like, feet and inches and all that stuff, but they're fully, you just use metric. Here in the UK, it's really funny. It's like, it's such a hybrid, because you've got like signs, everything's in miles per hour, but then when you go to get fuel, that's per the liter. And you jump on the scale, you've actually got three. You could be in pounds, you could be in stones, which is like 13.7 pounds or something like that. You could also be in obviously kilos. So there's so many different like types of measurements that I have in my head. And that's another thing with living in different countries, is so when you live in America, you're so used to the American accent. You're used to hearing that. And at some point you can like think about like, okay, this person is a bit West Coast. Okay, anybody that's in Texas or East Coast, you get to sense there's like a different way of speaking. However, there's still that idea that's like, okay, that's still a general American accent. But when I moved to Australia, obviously, there's the Australian accent. And just like in America, how you have people that you could tell they've been to some sort of upper class or posh type of school, so they have a different way of pronouncing or enunciating everything. And then you have people that are clearly happy to be more colloquial constantly. So they sort of take pride in that type of speech. And of course, that's the same anywhere you go. That's definitely the same in Australia. And I remember I was doing construction in America. I had a business where I did like renovations and roofs and whatever I could, basically. And if somebody was like, oh, can you do this? I'd be like, yeah. Even if I didn't know exactly how to do it, I'd figure it out. So I went to Australia, and I'm at this place. So in Australia, if you want to get a job and you just like labor, then you can go to these like labor hire places. And at the labor hire stores, it's not like a retail shop of just labor people like waiting to be hired. It's just a recruitment agency for short-term work. Generally it's for labor, and that'll be anything from just being pure manual labor to, hey, you're actually skilled. So I'm at this place somewhere in Brisbane, which is where I lived, and the guy was a tradie, but he had turned like recruitment, so he didn't want to be a tradie any longer. He wanted to be in an office, but his accent was so like it was so hard for me to get. It was really hard, and I think something with the Australian language is they do these things called diminutives, so they cut words off, and they also speak faster. So they say words quicker. So when you're not used to it, you just like what? But then obviously I was there for 6 years, and to the point where when I went back to America to visit family that I knew that I grew up with, they thought I had an Australian accent. And even here, living in Scotland, I get this thing where people will be like, "Oh, where are you from?" Because even though they could hear the American, they're also hearing the Australian in there. And so even if you say like YouTube or Australia or stupid, or there's certain things I've picked up that I don't. A part of me doesn't want to like get rid of them. It doesn't want to stop having that because I enjoyed my time in Australia so much. So I have this sort of like, what's the word? Like it's like a snowballing accent. And even though I've been here in Scotland for nearly 4 years, I don't actually know if I've picked up much Scottish accent. And I'm not going to try it because it's its own thing, and I'm not really going to try Australian stuff because that's its own thing. I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do. So that's my little like moving accent tirade type of thing. The way that I lived in Australia for 6 years, and I eventually got to citizenship there, and I had done that with sort of a traditional like partnership visa. And that's one of the ways that you can kind of move countries and get citizenship. And there's fees that you pay, and there's time that you have to be in the country to do that. Here in Scotland, though, I'm on a work visa, so I just work here long enough. And once you've been here for about 5 years on a work visa without having been out of the country for a certain period of time, you can apply for what's called indefinite leave to remain. Indefinite leave to remain means that you're a permanent resident. You're not a citizen, but you don't have to have a visa. You can just live here and do what you want. Once you've had that for at least a year, and these things are always changing, so I'm not giving it advice. Even though I have worked in immigration and like education consultancy, I'm not giving advice. You just have to apply for citizenship. And again, you pay a fee and you fill out a form and you tick all the right boxes. But that's my goal. That's what I'm doing here at the moment, is to get that. And then afterwards, I don't know, 5 years, something like that, I'd love to move somewhere else and keep building the identities. So that was just a little hello, third day of the vlog, my thoughts on things. I think about stuff, and then I go to say it, and then I had no idea that I was going to talk about accents or my interaction with people that have accents. What I want to leave with today is a couple things. One is, so I'm a math person, and I say I'm a math person. I love everything. Like, I picked up a Star Trek spinning bike. So kind of your classic spinning bike that you would have seen in a gym. But the bottom bracket was broken. And the bottom bracket is the piece of hardware that goes horizontally through the frame of the bike, where the main sprocket is that has the chain where it's connected to your pedals. That was broken. And so I ordered one of those, and then I ordered some new bearings for the front sort of concrete or really heavy wheel. Now, these things, brand new, are very expensive, like 400 pounds easy for a used one. But because this thing was broken, I paid 30 pounds, but I'm handy, so I fixed it, and I rode it for a bit, but now I'm thinking of selling it off and getting a bit of a profit for that. So I really like that. I like the idea of finding something and then using some sort of skill that you have to exploit it. So like I use that word to exploit, but I really mean like using your skills to make a profit, to make something for yourself. So I like figuring stuff out, and I think that's what I love about mathematics, is it's sort of constant training to think about things abstractly, to come up with a pattern, to come up with something that helps you see it from maybe a bare bones perspective, and then you could come up with rules to make decisions. So yesterday with math, I was talking about John Kelly, and it is John Kelly, and the Kelly criterion, and that's a sort of way of thinking. If you have an advantage in a gambling or investment situation, then proportional to what you think your advantage is and what you think what your bankroll is, that's what you bet. So it's there's a lot of stuff for that, and you can look up a lot of things for that. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, he thinks that that's maybe not the right view, or he's got a cool video on it, to say the least. So I was thinking about randomness, because that's what I was talking about yesterday. And the thing about randomness, like I said, is it's sort of like, hey, you don't really know what's going on. There's no pattern that you can detect. But when it comes to thinking about events, like random events that you're like, hey, I don't know what the result is, but I could say what the result could be. And what the result could be depends on the type of variable that you're dealing with. So I talked about flipping a coin yesterday, or I talked about like weight. Now, those types of variables differ. So, and that kind of comes down to getting an idea of what is a probability to begin with. So there's a set of like axioms, like fundamental rules to what probability is. One of them is it's a number between 0 and 1. And it is another one where all the probabilities sum to 1. And there's another one that I'll have to look up. It's probably a really basic one. But either way, you have this probability that goes from 0 to 1. So it's like some event that occurs with a probability. So it measures how likely that event is for happening. So what I wanted to say is that when you have random variables, you have two types mainly. Now, you could have like collections of these numbers. Okay, that's the second take. I like to do these in one go. This will be two. I'll have to stitch it together. Where I live, there's one little block of grass, and I take my dogs out. And then there's another block of grass. Now, it's admittedly the same yard, but there's a little divider. And the apartment system has sort of two apartment numbers. And I've got a neighbor that doesn't like it. She was pounding on the window when my dog ran over to that side, so I had to pause. So this will be edited together, even though I like to just do this in one go. But ending with what I wanted to say was types of numbers in mathematics, you could think of broadly as discrete and continuous. A discrete number is something like 1, 2, 3. Now that's expressed as a whole number. There's no decimal place. It is exactly that number. Or fractions are another example of discrete numbers, even though they are what you call dense on the number line. But you can still express every fraction as a ratio of two integers, whether they're positive or negative, as long as the bottom or the denominator is not 0. So that means that 1/2, 0.5, 0.5000000 for infinity can just be expressed as anything that will like sort of shrink down or reduce to 1/2. So 5/10, 5/10, 50/100, 13/26. I mean, it's endless. So it's a discrete number. And then you have continuous numbers. Continuous numbers are infinite fractional, they can be expressed as decimal places that go on infinitely. And the thing with continuous numbers is they are what you call uncountably infinite. That means that you can never extract the exact continuous number perfectly. For example, pi. Now you could say pi is a continuous number. In fact, it's what you call a transcendental number, which is a discussion for another time. But there's no end to pi, and people run in supercomputers the like lengths of pi to billions and billions of places, and there's no pattern. There has been no known pattern to repeat in pi or e. And there's any number of other like continuous numbers. But you can't actually extract that pi because you would never finish writing that decimal expansion. So continuous numbers, you only have them in terms of intervals. So you could say, what's the probability that this event is between 0.5 and 0.7, where you're dealing with continuous numbers. Whereas discrete could be like, what's the probability that we get 7 phone calls today? Whereas what's the probability that I'm going to be 5'8"? So those are discrete and those are continuous variables. And when you're dealing with something that you don't know what they are just yet, but you say will if you perform an experiment, those are random variables. And in random variables, you have a range of outcomes. You have a set of possibilities. And by looking at those possibilities, at those possible expressions, you can get an idea for how likely certain combinations are. So that's where you get into the idea of distributions. So tomorrow I'll leave with the idea of probabilities and distributions, or I'll start with that, and we'll have a little discussion about that aspect of life. Anyways, goodbye. Thank you all for joining in and listening to me rant about accents and various movements of my life and some probability. I love talking about this stuff, and I'll probably just keep doing it as long as I can. Okay. Again, I should probably put this at the beginning. If you like this content, subscribe, like, hit the bell notification so I can get to you when I release new videos. And right now, I'm doing a daily vlog. All right. Bye, everybody.